Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneur. This is Let's Go International Week, and we are featuring some amazing digital nomads and location-independent entrepreneurs. And that's what this series is really all about. It's about how we can create more freedom and flexibility in our businesses and in our lives. And so I'm super excited to share with you our guest today, Cody Mckibben. He is from Thrilling Heroics, and he is really the perfect model for this whole digital nomad, amazing business lifestyle. He's calling in from London today, but he's been all over the place since we started chatting about this series. So it's so awesome to have you here, Cody.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for, I'm really happy to speak with you guys today.
Yay, awesome. So I'd love to share with everyone, in case some of you are meeting Cody for the first time, a little bit more about who he is, and then we'll dive into our discussion for the day. But Cody is a web marketer, an entrepreneurship and lifestyle writer, online business advisor, mentor, coach, WordPress tinkerer, and web developer. And he's spoken on stage and organized several of his own events all over the world, from San Francisco to Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Santiago, and Costa Rica. And it's awesome to have you here with us, Cody. Thanks again for being on the Adventurous Entrepreneur.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course. It's great to
Awesome.
be here.
Yay. So I already kind of spilled the beans about where I already shared that you're calling in from London, but can you tell us, what you're doing? What are you doing in London? Why are you there?
Well, yeah, it's been a while since I've been in Europe. I've spent 5 years living and traveling very slowly all around Southeast Asia when I was just starting to get my business going, and then I spent about the last year in South and Central America. I just came out to meet up with my dad and my stepmom actually go and have a little road trip around the UK. We started in London, went up north and explored Liverpool, the Lake District, Scotland, went up to the Isle of Skye and checked out like some of our way back family heritage and made our way back down here. And I'm just camping out with a few friends, hanging out in London for a week before I moved to Berlin for the summer. So,
Woohoo! Awesome. Oh my gosh, I love Berlin. I might have to come visit you. Um, so, oh my gosh, there's so many questions I want to ask you, but actually, the first question I want to ask, because I've been asking all of the speakers this, is did you have a moment when you knew that you had to be an entrepreneur, that you were just not cool with the 9-to-5 lifestyle?
I did. I can tell really long, rambly stories if you need to, but this story, I just told someone else this recently, as a matter of fact. But yeah, when I think back, from when I very first started working through college, I worked through school, paid, so had a lot of jobs, mostly part-time and short-term, but like something like 17 jobs in all, from my mid-teens to when I finally quit when I was about, I guess I was 24. But the major turning point, I think, was my last job before going out on my own. I was working as basically an office assistant and the main assistant to the dean of business at my university. I kind of fell into that job after having a student job with them for a couple of years, and when I graduated, a position came open, and I took it. It was kind of the easy thing to do at the time. But yeah, I can't speak ill of the job because it was a great opportunity. I worked with great people. I learned an awful lot, and it turned me onto business, working at the College of Business, and I met like a lot of amazing people. Did a lot of event planning and so on. But yeah, my day-to-day activities and responsibilities were pretty monotonous and not super exciting. First one in the office, it was my responsibility to make sure there was coffee on and basically just hang out there waiting for people to come in and visit the dean and keep his calendar, things like that. And work supervisor was flexible I worked, with the spare time, I could read and do whatever I want as long as I'm not playing video games. So that's kind of when I got into reading a lot about business through books and magazines and blogs and etc. But yeah, the turning point came when one of my coworkers, who was a very lovely lady, but they had a 30-year anniversary for her working in the office, and I just thought. She worked in the office right next to me, but I just thought, like, yeah, I can't still be here in 30 years doing the same thing, filing the same reports, pushing the same paper. For some people, I know that that's enough, like you go to work, you get your stuff done, and you can afford a nice lifestyle, and that's maybe all some people need from their career. But for me, I need something more. Less mind numbing and more
Yeah.
exciting and central to my purpose. So that was a big turning point for me. Just that, oh man, I could easily be here in 30 years because it was comfortable,
Yeah.
like it was decent, full benefits, great retirement package, all that stuff. But for me, I need, even if it's much more high risk, I need something that really turns me on and makes me excited to get out of bed every morning.
Yeah, totally. And so what was the first business you created then?
I'm sorry, say again?
What was the first business that you created?
So yeah, basically, I started writing online in 2006 about just about what I was learning in business. I used to go to a lot of conferences and business events, and see a lot of speakers. I was in and out of Silicon Valley for the events mostly a lot. And yeah, as I got more and more interested in business, at first I was thinking like I wanted to sneak my way into graduate business school at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
because I had an undergrad in like history and religious studies and humanities, and I did see like that's a route to basically buying a network, a fantastic network.
Yeah.
But in the end, just through my mostly online activities and connecting with people that way, I realized I didn't actually need that. Didn't need to go pay for the graduate degree.
Right.
But yeah, so I started writing online in '06, just kind of what I was learning and the ideas I was having and my journey, starting up. But one of the other writers that I connected with very early on basically became a bit of a mentor to me, a business mentor. And he was and is actually president or CEO or chairperson for like 8 different companies at
Oh,
any given
wow.
time in Silicon Valley, and he's published, I think, 3 major books now. So, but yeah, I had the good fortune of like having built this relationship with him over time. Very friendly guy, gave me a lot of direction and advice. And one day he reached out to me and he said, "Do you know anyone?" Because he knew like I had a lot of creative and techie friends. But he asked if I knew anyone who could build him a WordPress blog, and this was like pretty early days for WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
And I did ask around because I had, but surprisingly, no one like specialized in that. Hardly anyone knew what that was. But I
Wow.
doing it as a hobby, kind of, just playing around with my own sites for a couple of years at that point. So what I did was I actually, I'd asked around, but I got zero response basically. But like something like within 2 or 3 days, I just worked my butt off and I made a site for him, and turned around and first response was like, I didn't find anyone, but I made this for you, kind of as a way to say thank you for all the guidance you've given me. And I didn't want anything for it, just to return the favor. And luckily, really impressed him. And that kind of started this side business. It was a side business for 6 or so months. I started basically building WordPress sites for a lot of authors and small businesses. But but yeah, he was so impressed that he referred a lot of his friends, a lot of business to me. Ever since he has new projects or new businesses, he still kind of comes back to me a lot of the time. So that really got things rolling with word of mouth, and then it grew from there. But yeah, I started as a WordPress developer, I suppose, and then it's grown into a lot of other things since.
Very cool. And can you tell us a little bit more then about Thrilling Heroics and what that's all about?
Well, yeah, in '06, it kind of started, like I said, with a little bit of a different purpose. Like I was thinking at the time that I wanted to make it a sort of a portfolio, I guess, for just my entrepreneurial experiments and what I was learning, like I'd said. But slowly, as I got into doing business, kind of, it wasn't what I planned on, but it was just something I had a skill and could help people out. And so took advantage of that and built that into something. And then, so it became more a documentation of my business, as opposed to just like sharing stuff I was reading and learning and hearing
Yeah.
from others. And then when I read the 4 Hour Work Week, like probably a lot of people, it's kind of the
Yes.
Bible for people in my network. In late 2007, for whatever reason, it's so obvious, but no one had really talked about that in such a public way, at least.
Right.
But Tim Ferriss was like, hey, you can, if you have work you can do online, you can do it somewhere else where the cost of living is a lot cheaper. Continue earning in dollars or pounds or euros or whatever, and your money will go a lot further. And that was an eye-opening moment for me as well. And a number of things kind of gave me an interest in Thailand in particular. I had
Yeah.
a very good friend who'd spent a lot of time there teaching and just heard good things and read like cool stories about people who went to Thailand and like the beach, so early on, like that was on my radar. So that was the first place I went. But yeah, so over time, I guess Thrilling Heroics has evolved with me, and it continues to evolve with me. It is, kind of my headquarters online where I guess people find out about my business and the things I do. But above all, it's just a personal passion where I try to keep the flexibility to talk about wherever my passions lead me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and you have built so much flexibility into your life and, even into the work that you do. It's not for you. It sounds like it's not just flexibility with location, but it feels like there's also flexibility in the type of work that you do. Like you get to, always be pursuing whatever you're passionate about in the moment, which is really cool. And I think, this is something we've talked about in some of the interviews too, that I think at least for this kind of adventurous entrepreneur crowd, we're not really into the like, what's your 5-year business plan? What's your 10-year business plan? Because we're all evolving all the time. And that's how we get to be constantly shifting our businesses so that they fit our lives versus the other way around.
Yeah, you know what? I used to do that, the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it's a bad idea because it's probably a good idea for a lot of people. But yeah, just the nature of how I live my life has drastically changed so fast that I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
'Cause I can't
Why
predict
bother?
weeks from now. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm keeping, 3-month goals and like kind of a rough map for the year ahead, I'm doing pretty well these days. But yeah, I mean, if I do think, if you're in a more traditional career, I suppose it's probably wise to do a 5-year, 10-year plan. Like if it's going to be more, what's the word? It's not going to be so chaotic, I guess.
Yeah.
Then that might, excuse me, that might make more sense. But yeah, for me, like moving location all the time and with myself as my only boss, yeah, I have the flexibility to experiment with completely different things if I want to, excuse me, as far as services I provide and businesses I get into. So yeah, it's just like, I try not to limit myself too much, I guess. Just remain open to whatever opportunities present themselves and yeah, how my interests and whatever passions kind of evolve.
Cool. This is bringing up a couple of different questions I want to ask you, but the first one is, because I think probably that some people tuning in are really thinking about starting to do this in their own lives. So, I know that there are some different kind of digital nomad hubs around the world. You've mentioned a couple of them already: Thailand, Chiang Mai specifically, Berlin, Germany. I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about how you choose where to go. Because I know there are things to consider when you want to start, really creating a location independent business. So what advice would you have for someone who's thinking, okay, I'm ready to go live in another city, another country. Where should I go?
It's going to be different for everyone, but yeah, so depending on like how versed you are in doing business on your own. Have you been self-employed for a while, or are you just starting?
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of experience in business in general, whether it's in a career or not, or do you have none? And, do you have a lot of money saved up, or do you have very little? I mean, are you a guy? Are you a girl? Let's be honest, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does.
So I can't say for everyone, but generally I would say for a lot of people starting out, and like you say, yeah, there's a lot of hot spots. So a couple, yeah, I mean, Chiang Mai, I started in Thailand because I had like $2,000 to my name at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some might have even less, but that's not a lot, right?
Right.
When you're like, okay, I'll just quit my job and see what happens.
Yeah.
But I knew that, Thailand, for example, is one place where the cost of living can be affordable enough that'll last you quite a while.
Yeah.
And there's a few other places too. But yeah, I mean, I hopped all over Thailand over the course of like 4 years, but Chiang Mai was spectacular. I didn't get there till a bit later, actually, but I'd had so many friends hanging out up there and hearing so many good things. It's the most affordable city I've ever lived in, and I've lived in like 7 countries so far.
Yeah.
Great infrastructure compared to a lot of other parts of the country, a lot of other parts of Southeast Asia. Like pretty solid internet on the whole. Pretty friendly and largely well-educated folks that live there. Like I found that generally, like the bulk of people I crossed paths speak pretty good English, so that wasn't a big barrier. Whereas like certain other parts of the country, you might not have such an easy time conversing with people. And I mean, yeah, like it's getting nicer and, in a way, I guess, more westernized kind of every year. Great cafe culture. And yeah, every year more and more people like us that are living there, or at least spending significant time there, whether they're blogging or whatever, running their own business, doing something. So there's like a great expat community. And more so a digital nomad community, lots of people to connect with and spend time with there, which was fantastic for me. I spent like 7 months in and out of there.
Cool.
So yeah, if you're starting out, I do recommend that for a lot of people because it's also very safe. The food is fantastic. The people are just super warm and friendly. There's lots to do. But, somewhere like that is great if you are starting with a brand new business idea or you don't have a lot of cash, because with the really low cost of living, we call it runway. Like if you have $2,000 saved up, it means you can extend your runway. You've got a lot longer you can stay before you need to jettison the idea, and try something else, go back home or come up with another plan. But, whereas... So you have $2,000. That might last you a month in New York or London.
Yeah, maybe. If that.
But you could stretch it to 6 or 8 months probably in a place like Chiang Mai.
That's amazing.
And then Berlin. I'm just going for the first time next week. But from everything I've read and heard from friends, I believe it's the cheapest capital city in Western Europe, and yeah, it's supposed to be a great place. There's quite a entrepreneurial scene there as well, similar in some ways. Medellin in Colombia, which is where I spent the last 6 months, was great, not too expensive, and with Colombia, you got the benefit of being basically on the same time zone as the U.S. if that's where you're from, and really cheap flights in and out of Medellin in particular, like if you're coming from LA or Florida or New York sometimes, stuff like that. But go to Thrilling Heroics. There's all kinds of info about different destinations, but it just depends what you're looking for and kind of where you're coming from, I guess.
I love it. That's awesome. And I'm curious, actually, can you give us some insight into how you choose? Like, how did you choose Berlin this time around? Was it just cool because you haven't been yet? Or, is there a particular community you're hoping to connect with there?
For me, I mean, yeah, I've experimented with different things. I lived in Bangkok for a year and a half. I lived near the beach in the south of Thailand, which was stunning, but for 2 years. And then I've done the other end of the spectrum where I'm moving like a lot, whirlwind travel for 6 months at a time and seeing like whatever, dozens of destinations. And for me, personally, I found that what I'm comfortable with is like somewhere in between. I
Yeah.
like to stay somewhere long enough that I can actually like I'll have a local pub or bar or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like my local where I go. I get to know the people that own the place, make some
Yeah.
friends. But yeah, enough time to really explore the city I'm living in, make some friends locally, and hopefully get out of the city a little bit and have a few excursions, get to know the area. But I'm also not like in tourist mode. A lot of people
Yeah.
they hear what I'm doing and they think that my life is just a permanent vacation, and that's not really the case either. There is the misleading idea of like, oh, you could just have your laptop and work on the beach all the time. I
Yeah.
lived on the beach. You can hang out near a beach if that's what you want,
Yeah.
but I also had like my home office, and I was there every day for some
Yeah.
period of time. I think I told you yesterday, like, I don't get to take a day off, but that's because I
You're
just
right.
have a lot to do and I love what I do. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, for me. I tend to try to stay for at least a couple months nowadays. Like that's what I settled on is what I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Unless it's somewhere like here in London, I'm just hanging out for a couple weeks in the UK because I can't afford it for the long run. Like I'll spend more here in a week than I will in Berlin in a month. So,
Yeah.
um, but no, more importantly, what I guess rules my decisions. I want to slowly take in as much as I can of the world. Like travel is obviously something I'm really passionate about, and I
Yeah.
would like to get to all kinds of places. See all well, I'm not that dead set on seeing Antarctica, but all the other continents.
Maybe someday.
Well, it's like I don't know. There's penguins, but to me there's not a lot else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm exploring, in the long term. So I want to get everywhere, but I tend to go where I know a few people at least, where I've been hearing great things for a while. Like, I mean, yeah, that's Medellin, Colombia was going to be a good place to go. I planned on going for 6 months before even ever setting foot in the country,
Mm-hmm.
just based on what I heard from friends and knowing some of the folks that were there, and then same with Berlin. It's always a little bit of a gamble. We'll see if I am in love with a community of like-minded people there already.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people strike out on their own and can do that. If you're super adventurous and resourceful, you can do that. But it's a lot easier if you go somewhere where you at least have a couple contacts, people you can ask for advice and at least hang out with, get you started.
Yeah. And you're bringing up something that a number of other people have talked about too, where if you're going to actually take your business and be location independent with it, having some kind of community is huge. And that's for so many different reasons. I mean, I'm sure that you participate in masterminds and you have other entrepreneurs that you talk strategy with. I know you must have mentors that are supporting you in building the type of business that you want. And I think it is really important to share with this audience that, especially if you're doing this for the first time, I'm sure you would agree, Cody, that it makes sense to go first to a place where there's already a community there of digital nomads so that
Yeah.
you have other people that can help you. And, I've heard from some people too that I've interviewed that, once they get to a hub like Chiang Mai, we can keep using that as an example, they meet other people that they can learn from. And really, it actually is what helps you take your business to the next level because you're finding other people that are using online marketing that have built businesses that, completely exist online and all of that. And, I found in my own experience too, that just having community has made my business so much more successful than if I were doing it on my own. So.
Oh, totally. I mean, I had a really solid network, thankfully, through one good friend when I first started. Like I had one close friend that I'd gone to university with in Bangkok, and his name's Dwight Turner. He runs In Search of Sanook, which is kind of a local charity and volunteer organization in Bangkok that people should
Cool.
check out if they go. But yeah, he thankfully, like he was my basically my one point of contact when I first moved abroad. You know, like I got a one-way ticket, and I was like, well, I know. But thankfully, I hadn't even planned on staying in Bangkok, but I ended up staying there for a year and a half
Wow.
because he was so connected, and he introduced me to just probably hundreds of people over the year and a half I was there.
Yeah.
Just really great people from all over the place doing all kinds of different things. But yeah, I also like subsequently I did spend time in places like on the beach, which was beautiful. And I'm such a beach person.
Me
I can't
too.
go more than a couple months without seeing the ocean. It's really hard for me. So I was really fortunate, and I loved living on the beach. But it was in a place that was it was just off the path enough, and there wasn't a community of like-minded people there. Like I would see people occasionally that would come visit, but for the most part, it was kind of like working in isolation for 2 years, and that was probably the most challenging period I've gone through in my
Yeah.
business. Other reasons as well as challenges in the business, but yeah, like when you're working in isolation anywhere, whether it's at home, if you're working on the side while you got a job, or on the road somewhere living abroad, if you're too much in isolation, either physically or any other way, like it is very difficult. And yeah, since then, like that's why Chiang Mai was so great for me. After that, it was, there's 25, 30 people around doing similar things to me. So every day I could go to a cafe somewhere, hang out with people working, yeah, go out for drinks after work, blah blah blah. But more importantly, no matter where you are, it's very feasible for just about anyone to find community, at least online, through stuff
Yep.
like what you're doing here and stuff like what I'm doing. That's why I ended up building Digital Nomad Academy. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have a group of guys I get on the phone with every week as well, my mastermind group. I was on the phone with them yesterday, and that's something like we're all kind of constantly roaming around the world as well. But we make a commitment to try to get on the phone no matter where we are, and that's something that keeps me going every week as well. Just like you say, sharing, having kind of a support group. I guess that sounds weird, but
No, it really is a support group because, owning a business is really challenging. And I often, liken it to parenting, and I'm not a parent, so I don't know what that's like. But, it is the sort of thing that you can really only understand if you've done it yourself. And I think, we go through really hard times, really high highs and really low lows as entrepreneurs. It's taxing in so many different ways. And to me, every time it gets hard and I think to myself, okay, do I want to go back and get a job? The answer is always no way, and that's why it's really important to have people around that can support you, that know what you're going through, that have been through it. So for anyone who's watching who doesn't yet have community, that's one of the first things I would say to find that community of people who can support you, as well as having mentorship. But
yeah.
Cody, I would love to know if you can share with us like some of the keys to actually being successful at business as a location independent person. What do you have to do to actually, keep your business going while you're traveling all over the world? You're changing continents and time zones all the time. How do you make it work?
Well, from like a technology side, I guess things are changing all the time, So whatever my answer will be this week could be different in 6 months. But plug into a community online, follow, yeah, whatever the trends are in your business. Excellent for meeting people and for getting just the trending news in whatever your industry is. In addition to obviously like promoting your own stuff, but I've met so many people just through Twitter in my
Cool.
travels. Um, I mean, yeah, it depends what you're doing. For me, I've got the laptop. I have a few tools that kind of help me schedule things with people, like figure out time zone stuff.
Yeah.
I have an iPhone, which is costly because I'm on my third one this year.
What
For
did you do
various
with the
reasons.
other ones?
One of them got stolen,
Uh-huh.
and one of them I just busted it because I was in a torrential rainstorm in Costa Rica.
You
But
poor thing.
yeah, these things happen, but for me it's a worthwhile enough investment to dish out the $600 or whatever for a factory unlocked iPhone.
Yep.
That's the thing. I mean, whatever, yeah. Actually, I went 2 or 3 months this year without a phone, like period, with
Wow.
ice and no other means to like connect with my friends. It's not. It was actually kind of nice to not have a phone, but as a tool for doing a lot of the type of work I do, at least, it's there's no benefit to having an old dumb phone. So for me, it's a worthwhile
Hmm.
investment to have something like the iPhone. And yeah, you get the one that you can just show up at almost any airport in the world and buy a SIM card in any new country you go to, and you can instantly contact your friends and figure out, how to get around, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that's my life, really. The
Yeah.
laptop, the iPhone, a couple of books, and like I don't even have very many clothes, and I travel around with like one big backpack, and that's my
Yeah.
whole life.
Life in a backpack. I love it. And I'm curious too, Cody, like I know that there's, a mental and a discipline piece to this too. So what have you had to do kind of more, from a psychological perspective almost to make this work for you? Like, do you have a set structure that you work within that allows you to be successful? Because at least for myself, I know that when I'm traveling, even if I'm in one place for a long period of time, it's easy to feel really distracted by like, oh, I want to go check out this place or do this thing, or like,
Yeah.
how do you make it work from that perspective?
Well, that's again is going to be personal to people.
Yeah.
I've experimented with and have a lot of friends that find the Pomodoro technique really great. I mean, like there's all kinds of
Yeah, Jason and I
productivity
talked about
advice.
that.
It depends how you're wired,
Yeah.
but yeah, figure out whatever productivity kind of framework works for you.
Yeah.
I won't go into them myself because I'm not the productivity guru,
Okay.
but I do feel like necessity is the mother of invention, right? I don't know who originally. One thing, like if you're just starting out, it's about the best place you could be. Because if you're virtually poor, like if your bank balance doesn't have a lot in it, then you're gonna have the motivation to like build whatever it is you're building,
Yeah.
to hustle your ass off to make it work. Like I said before, I mean, going to a lot of parts of the world, going to whatever, like say developing world nations. For folks like us, we're very fortunate. If you're earning in a stronger currency, like that's the biggest hack to, like I said, extending your runway.
Yeah.
And basically buying yourself a little more time to experiment and do what you need to do to get your business off the ground. So for a lot of people, I think like that's an epic win right there. It's just relocating somewhere so you can spend 6 months or whatever making your project successful by whatever is necessary. But yeah, one insight I have found, like the longer I've been doing this and kind of the more successful, not that I'm like huge or anything, but the easier it gets and the less I have to worry from month to month, like the lazier I get. So that's why I
Mm.
say it's like, yeah, when your back's up against the wall,
Yeah.
it's and that's the time to get something going. It's everything's a risk in life, but I
Right.
think if you're passionate enough to strike it out on your own, then just go for it and go all in. Quit your job, do what you have to do, but
Yeah.
don't fear too much the ways you can fail, because the biggest in the long run, I think, like for success in general, but I mean in business, no matter what you're doing, whether what business you're in, or whether you decide to go with kind of this location independent digital nomad idea or not. Like, I feel with the friends I've made over the last 8 years, I started blogging and doing business online. Yeah, around the same time as a whole bunch. I don't know how to describe it, but the beginning of this whole location independent thing.
Yeah.
But I've got a lot of peers that didn't do that either. They just stayed in the States. But there was a ton of people that started writing online and experimenting in business around the same time I did. And honestly, when I look around, most of them are still there.
Cool.
So I had this conversation with one of my mentees in Chile a couple months back, and he said, like, yeah, what does it take to make it? And I think it is just dogged determination, really.
Yep.
It's refusing to quit. And honestly, 95% of the people I kind of started around the same time with, they're still there. They might be doing something different than they were at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's like, once you quit your job, most people can't go back. You can't go back. Once you figure it out, like, you fall in love with, doing your own thing. But yeah, you might pivot, as they say. You might need to change your entire business plan. You might need to work on something different, provide a different service. But it'll take a tremendous amount of effort to figure out what people want, how you can give it to them, what works. But as long as you basically don't give up, you refuse to give up, like, you'll find a solution.
Yep.
And I really do think that's the major key. Is anyone who refuses to stop, they'll find some solution.
I completely agree. And I think it's pretty amazing that you have seen so many of the people that you started with actually continue, because most businesses fail. The failure rate of businesses is very high. So you're obviously tapped into the right community of people that, have just pushed through any resistance, challenges that have come up, pivoted, done what they needed to do to just keep things going. So I think that's a really important point.
Well, that's, I've failed a few times, and yeah, most of my friends have failed a few times. And if you read the bios, the books by any of the big, huge heads of business these days, they'll say that over and over, right?
Yeah.
Like, failure is something we all have to face. You'll go through many failures before you hit success. And yeah, that statistic, I guess, is probably correct. Whatever, a high percentage of businesses fail. But most people with successful businesses, they had like several failures before they found the thing that really took off, that had wings. And I think that's the key. You have to be willing. You don't get too married to your idea.
Yeah.
I think it is great when you have a general, whatever it is, like a group of people that you want to help, or a certain realm that's your passion, but you do have to be willing to change, to morph a bit, to adapt. So don't be too married to whatever it is, your product, your business model, whatever. But if you can adapt, you will eventually find what works. But everyone says that. You'll fall down 7 times, get up 8. Right?
And it's true. It really is true. So, for anyone who's really worried about failure, go out and fail, because it'll get you that much closer to the success that you're looking for. Yeah. Sounds crazy, but it really is true. You're right. Every single successful entrepreneur out there, if you learn their story and their background, they have some seriously big, embarrassing failures in their past. Yes. So it's true. Awesome, Cody. Well, I know there's a lot more that we can learn from you, and I know that you're sharing a couple of resources with us. Could you share a little bit more about those and where we can get them?
If people go to my site at thrillingheroics.com and then /adventurous for you adventurous entrepreneurs.
Woohoo!
thrillingheroics.com /adventurous. I've got a cool video there that I hope you guys enjoy, and you can sign up for my free 7-day Hero's Journey mini course. if you want to live your life a little more heroically with me. And there's a bit of exclusive audio, a couple PDF downloads, and you'll also get two pretty sweet action videos from AppSumo on kind of getting set up and started with your business. So go check that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cody. This has been amazing. And don't worry, everyone. I'll send the link out, so you'll be able to grab it. But I know you just shared some really inspiring words, but in parting, do you have any last things that you want to share with this adventurous entrepreneur audience?
I guess I'd reiterate, just don't give up. I think I was in the mental trap for most of my life of looking for the security and the more guaranteed quote unquote success. It's easy to, it's not easy, but it's not too difficult to find a career that'll get you your basic needs fulfilled. But I do feel, again, it's not for everyone, but a lot of people want more. They want to do something more aligned with what they're about, and for a lot of folks, I think that means striking out on your own and doing your own thing. And I just want to reiterate, it's like if you cut all ties, if you go without that safety net and just strike out on your own, do your own thing, and refuse to give up, do what needs to be done at all costs. It's going to be really hard the first few years, I guarantee you, but eventually, if you just don't quit, you'll find something that works. And it's so worth it.
Yeah, so worth it. Awesome. Cody, thank you again. This has been awesome, and I really appreciate you calling in from London when I know you're kicking it with your friends. It's been great to have you on The Adventurous Entrepreneur, and I look forward to seeing what else comes out of Thrilling Heroics.
Yeah. It's been great chatting with you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. We'll be in touch.
Cool.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.